Okay. Toggle it around, yeah.
FEMA steps in.
Lumber and steel and yes, all right. All right, are you ready, everyone?
Recording in progress.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Historic Preservation Commission. If we could do roll call, please.
Dave Anderson? Here. Herb Roberg?
Here.
Jen Mazias? Jen Mazias? Mary McGrath?
Here.
Tom Nimas?
Here.
Karen Novacek?
Here.
Laura Tulowitzki?
Here. Thank you. Looks like we have a quorum. If everyone could please pull your microphones a little bit closer and speak into the microphone so that those online can hear, that would be appreciated. And with that, I would look for a motion to open the public hearing, please.
I so move.
Second.
Motion by Karen, second by Dave to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is anyone here who would like to address the item of designating City Hall as a historic property. Dora, please come forward. And if you could sign in there,
Okay,
please, and then state your name and address for the record.
okay. Dora Kling, 522 3rd Avenue East, right here in town. Okay, and thanks. Okay. Does this sound, can you hear me? Is
If
this
you're close, yes.
close enough? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, first of all, for having this and voting for this, because it really is a very important thing to our city of Washburn that this goes through. And just to say that this is a local designation and that we could be national, state, or local. And this is our local designation, which we feel is really good. And we have several in town with the national or with the others, but it seems that these local ones are really good, sorry, for us in the city. So thank you for this very much. And just a little bit of things on our building. And just to let you know that this building was the first library we had. And it was small, but they built the Carnegie Library. Therefore, this building was going to be emptied. And the city had not had a city hall, so they made this building the city hall for us. And it wasn't big enough, and they added on to it, and they could not find the brick that they made anymore. And so that's why we have brownstone added on to our building. But it's very worth this saving. And you will get a brass plate that will go on the building, and it will designate just that this is a historic building. And then, let's see, just to let you know also that in town, we have this book, and it's called Wood, Stone, and Water. And this was made by the Heritage Group several years ago. But they're selling them in town at several places, but it will tell you all the ones that in the city that are preserved and about all of them. And so this would be something really good if you don't have one to look for. And that you will be getting a brass plate to be put on, which all the buildings do that have them, and that will be very significant. And so mostly it's just to say thank you. And the Heritage Group is very valuable to the city and has designated most of our heritage buildings are historic. So thank you so much. And it's just to let you know that there's a plaque that's on one of the buildings here in town. That's a brass plaque that it gives your history a little, and it's designated how important this building is to us. So, and do you have any questions or anything? It's mostly it's to say thank you for doing this, and it is important to our city.
And thank you for all your work on getting this together, Dora. Are there other benefits to having the local designation, or is it really just the importance of recognizing it within the community for the future?
Well, there can be, and if we inquire more, our state made this historic city, the city of Washburn, and that was really a big thing. And then it means all of these buildings are, that I believe there are certain wet loans or things like that because of these designated city that could be looked into, because I do believe there are some. And so it would be worth a look.
And then another question that came up was, are there any restrictions that go along with a local designation?
Yes, you can't change it unless if you do have something. For instance, if you wanted to paint it, it was a historic house and it needed paint, all you do is you have to come to City Hall here to you and get an okay and tell what you're going to paint it. It has to be something that restores it to its historic look. In other words, you can't decide your house, you want it to be green when it's always been white, or change it in any way when it's a historic place. So that just keeps everything the way that you want it to stay historic. But you would be the one to be able to give them the okay that what you show us and what you want to do is okay, it's not harming anything and maybe helping. That's what you do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And
Karen,
Mayor, I would move that, serving as the Historic Preservation Commission, that we approve the designation of Washburn City Hall as an historic place.
I will second.
Recommend to council. That. The Historic Preservation Commission recommends to council that we designate the City Hall as a historic place.
to recommend approval, okay.
Yes.
And that was a second?
It
Okay, by Dave. I guess, do we need to end the public hearing before we hear
Yes,
that?
and then we should reopen as a council.
I'll make a motion to close the floor.
Okay,
Second.
motion by Tom, second by Karen, to close the floor. Thank you, Dora, again, for your help and your information.
thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then we have the motion to recommend approval to council in a second. Any questions on that or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And with that, I will adjourn the Historic Preservation Commission. And call to order our city council meeting of Monday, October 10th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Laura Tulowitzki.
Here.
Karen Novacek,
Here.
Tom Nymus,
Here.
Mary McGrath,
Here.
Jennifer Mazias,
Here.
Carl Broberg,
Here.
Dave Anderson. Here.
And it looks like we have a quorum. I'm going to ask, Jen, if you don't mind pulling that microphone forward a little bit, so if you can, if there's any cord. Thank you.
got cord. We're good.
Thank you. And then the next is, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our next item is approval of minutes from City Council and Historic Preservation meeting on September 12th.
I'll make that motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Tom, second by Karen. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is approval of monthly expenditures.
Madam Mayor, I would move approval of the review of the monthly expenditures. The monthly expenditures as reviewed. Second.
Motion by Karen, second by Mary. Any questions, comments, discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dave Anderson. Yes. Carl Broberg,
Yes.
Jen Mazias,
Yes.
Mary McGrath,
Yes.
Tom Nymus,
Yes.
Karen Novacek,
Yes.
Clerk Tulowitzki?
Yes.
Motion carries, thank you. Our next item is public comment. Is anyone here who would like to give public comment or online? Seeing none, we will move on. Next item is mayoral announcements, proclamations, and appointments. And the only thing I really have today is a proclamation. And that is in recognition of Indigenous Peoples' Day, and I would like to read that. Whereas the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior Chippewa, one of 11 federally recognized Native nations in Wisconsin, is a neighboring community. And whereas Chequamegon Bay encompasses the spiritual center of Anishinaabe nations. And whereas throughout Wisconsin's history, Native American leaders such as Great Chief Buffalo, Walter Brissett, and others from this area have defended Native rights and promoted sovereignty and prosperity for their people. And whereas the city of Washburn recognizes the historical sacrifices of Indigenous peoples and values the social, economic, and cultural contributions they make. And whereas residents of the state of Wisconsin have a responsibility to oppose systemic racism towards Indigenous peoples in our state and in the United States, which perpetuates high rates of poverty and income inequality and exacerbates disproportionate health, education, and social outcomes. And whereas Indigenous Peoples' Day was first proposed in 1977 by the International Conference on Discrimination Against the Indigenous Population in the Americas, a delegation sponsored by First Nations leaders in the United States. And whereas a growing number of communities across the United States of America, including the state of Wisconsin, have declared the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples' Day, recognizing the historic importance of the indigenous populations that inhabited this region and the rest of the United States of America prior to European contact. And now therefore, I, Mary D. Motiff, Mayor of the City of Washburn, do hereby proclaim Monday, October 10th, 2022, to be Indigenous Peoples' Day in the City of Washburn, and strongly encourage City of Washburn residents to continue to promote racial equity and recognition of Indigenous cultures through education, engagement, and community outreach, reaffirming the commitment to demonstrate support of and appreciation for Indigenous peoples. And I don't have any appointments today, so we will move on. Our next item is discussion and action on creation of utilities / recreational easement west of baseball field, east of county forestry, Cliffgrass, and Ironworks properties. Washburn Ironworks is the petitioner, and this is in tab 3 of your packet. And you'll note the map is included here along with the memo. And if anyone would care to make a motion to get us started on this.
And Mayor, I would move that we approve the creation of utility / recreational easement west of baseball field, east of county forestry, Cliffgrass, and Ironworks properties.
I'll second that.
Motion by Karen and the second by Tom. Are there any questions? Jen?
A couple questions. So, currently, so this is above ground, and it's gonna be the same corridor. I mean, I'm just thinking like, for example, vegetation, like are we gonna, is this already a clear corridor, the blue line that's going through that is gonna be in the same corridor? Are we gonna have to take out any vegetation? I know that the Bayfield County Forestry Building, they planted some trees kind of along that area. So I'm just trying to think of that kind of stuff. And then also, the yellow line, I think it's a good idea, but, so there's nothing to be done with that right now. That's just what you're talking about for the future. Cause that's kind of I walk that all the time. It's like it's a slope and then it's another slope and it's kind of wet down in the middle. It kind of serves as like a little bit of a drain. And so I think it's a good concept. I think we'd have to do some pretty big like work in terms of try to make that into I don't know, I walk it all. I mean, it's very slopey. And it can get wet. And we've talked about putting like a vegetation buffer between our, what do we call that? Our business park and our athletic field. We've talked about doing that for a while. We've never actually done it, when we sold those lots. There's been some trees planted, I think, there. So I guess I'm just trying to get a visual of what this is gonna look like and what the thoughts are. So those are my questions. Thank you.
So in response to that, I can tell you that the blue line section would be along existing right-of-way. So I do know that the forestry has planted some items there. However, I don't anticipate that being an issue. I don't think they've planted anything that's necessarily going to grow super tall right now in that area. So I wouldn't be concerned about that. As far as the location of that would be on the proposed easement, you're correct in that physical improvements or basically establishing a trail and so forth, that will take time. However, the power line does need to move sooner rather than later. And Mr. Pearson is in the audience and may be able to speak a little bit more to that and the purposes behind that. But I would say that this would still allow ample opportunity for the city, the park committee to look at that area and kind of plot that out, whether there may need to be a small bridge or something over the wet area, the ravine through there, and then to eventually kind of connect up, go between the ball field and the business area, do more of the landscaping that may be desired in that area, to get that through the skate rink area, and then eventually formally connect up with the trail that the city did obtain earlier this summer that heads up towards Superior Avenue.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So the power line is also gonna be along the yellow too, or is it the
Yes.
power line is also along the yellow?
Yes, so the power line will be overhead in that area.
I don't have an issue with it, I just have a little bit of, I guess, reservations about the slope and the wetness in that area, but I think the power line, maybe when they put that in might help us a little bit, but I don't think it's actually gonna help us that much, like the way that those, the way that goes in, but, okay, just checking.
And looking at the map here, would it be like 4 power poles approximately along that yellow line?
I think so.
Okay,
We have no concerns with that with the baseball field.
well, that's what I'm kind of,
Yeah, I don't know anything about the power lines at baseball field.
it's outside of the fence of the baseball field. I don't know, does anyone have any concerns about the power lines in the baseball field proximity? With baseballs hitting the power line or anything like that?
I don't know anything about, I don't know.
Fireworks,
anything
what do you
about
got?
baseball.
I don't think that distance that we call that.
Yeah, okay.
I close outside that every once in a while. I mean,
Yeah, they
I
can-
find baseballs when I'm walking along that yellow line. So I know baseballs go that far. I don't know if they'll be that high
Right.
when they're that far.
That's what I'm saying. If there's any kids around here that can hit that hard and have that much of a launch angle to hit that line.
You never know.
Any other questions on this?
I don't, maybe I can guess, but is there some comment here about the cost of the movement? Because we talked about the road, moving power poles was a big expense. So how much is this going to cost to move the power pole this far?
Well, I'm not anticipating any cost to the city related to this. So this would be an Excel and an Ironworks project.
Yeah,
We like to hear that, thank you. Anyone else with questions on this? All right. So then we do have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries with one abstention. And our next item is discussion and action on amendment to development agreement with the Brewing Badger LLC, and this is tab 4 of your packet.
Move to amend the development agreement with Badger, Brewing Badger LLC, extending the provisions of section 4.6 on page 6 to June 30th of 2023.
Second that motion.
So we have a motion by Carl and a second by Karen. Does anyone have any questions? And I would just like to state that even though there's not a lot that people can see visually happening over there, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So this would definitely be in everyone's best interest. Any other comments?
Should we just check with, the owner to see if there's, Mr. Cole's quick to say anything about progress, because people are always asking and wondering.
Sure, we could certainly ask Mr. Kolish to come forward.
Seems like an opportunity.
Sure, no problem.
Welcome.
For formality here, Badger Kohler, 75415 Paulson Road, Washburn. Yeah,
And if you don't mind just pulling that mic up a little bit, that would be great when you're done here. So you don't get it down. We're at Dora height still.
that's quite all right. How's that?
Thank you,
All
perfect.
right, cool. So the synopsis here I'll offer you is that when we became eligible for the SAG grant, which was amended this fiscal year to include asbestos, we of course had to apply for that. It was another $150,000 grant, so we couldn't not apply. And so we had to wait till the fiscal year in July to apply, so that pushed us back. So that's the short version of why we're here. And as far as progress goes, we are looking at starting asbestos abatement on the 24th, and we will roll into demo as soon afterward as we possibly can. I don't know how to, that's about it.
That is very good.
All right.
Karen?
My question deals with construction, and the contract that we've negotiated with you indicates that substantially complete new construction and open the business for general public by December 31, 2023.
Yep, that's the goal. We can start next year. We're pretty confident. My GC and architect are confident, so I take them at their word.
Because I recognize that there have been delays, some
Sure.
of them outside your control, but I am just underlining that date as kind of the next deadline within this contract.
That is the goal. And if they tell me we're good to go, they're the experts.
That
So
gives me encouragement. Thank
taking them at their word. And happy autumn, everyone. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, very good. So we have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, and thank you. Take care, you too. And our next item is discussion and action on special event request for Book Across the Bay on February 17th and 18th, 2023. Benjamin Thone petitioner. And this is in tab 5 of your packet. So we also have copies of an email that came, and not everyone had received that yet, so we made copies for everyone here. I don't know that it says too much different than what we've, had discussions about. And I'm just gonna I guess recap a little bit that, we have expressed a desire to receive payment for services in the past. I know there was a meeting that occurred. I don't know that there was necessarily an agreed upon plan for how that would be addressed at that meeting. And now we have the request coming forward, and I think that we were expecting maybe to have a little more back and forth before that. So I don't know that we're 100% here yet, but if anyone wants to make a motion one way or the other on this, we could go that route, and that would open us up for discussion.
Well, I guess considering that everything we've discussed in the past has been addressed in some way, if services aren't requested or wanted, that's one issue. If we are having issues with damage, and that's why it's our director, our public works believes they should be doing plowing. It seems to be something could be discussed where they deal with damage costs later. Has this been an issue in the past where costs of damage and repairs has not been attainable? Is there some reason to believe that that would be an issue? To get reimbursement from this group, I mean, when we do approve permits to other events, then, I mean, how would we deal with it in any situation? If property's damaged and.
So the question is, have we received reimbursement for past damage or issues?
Yeah, there's a reference here from Public Works Director Schutte. There's been damage to the grounds in the past. 2/3 of the way down the page.
The answer is we have not.
Okay. And was this discussed in the meeting? I don't know who was there. Who was present at this meeting with the Book Across the Bay Board?
I know, Tony, you were there.
That meeting, the most recent one was with myself, Jerry, and Tom. We have had meetings in the past that include Bob Anderson and Melissa Martinez with the chamber.
Well, and maybe, do we need a motion to continue discussing anyway? Because then I would.
Ideally, yes, and so did you,
I would like to
you
make a
start,
motion to
Laura
approve
started a
this,
motion, so let's,
to approve their permit, to continue functioning as it has been, but would like to have more discussion.
Second.
So just to clarify, as it has been different ways.
I'm sorry, just to approve their application.
The request as presented. Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Okay, then we can have discussion. Anyone?
I'll start by,
Sorry, Tom has his hand up and then we'll go again.
Has anybody besides myself and Jerry seen what the end of West End Park looked like this spring down in the end where the book was? That grass was all tore up. There was all kinds of trash was left that the city had to pick up. The city went in there and fixed the lawn where it was just dug right up. I think the city should do the plowing and they should have to pay for it. Just giving them a free ride that was a lot of damage.
Jen?
I second the motion just simply because I feel like the Book Across the Bay is an excellent opportunity for our community, and we all know this, right? And I understand that our public works, I just look at the figures of $3,400, and I understand that $3,400 is $3,400, but I also feel like we are all very much mature, like individuals, and working with this group, I feel like the individuals that run this group, that we should be able to sit down, like Laura just talked about. We should be able to figure out a way to get the plowing done and things that, they are not asking us to do, that we should be able to negotiate with them. They do the plowing, and if they, like, Laura said, if we have an issue in the spring, we should be able to call the Book Across the Bay folks. They should come down and clean it up and they should fix it. And I feel like this group they're all outstanding citizens of our community. They care about our community. I feel like I'm quite disappointed in the fact that we can't, like, outside of council, come up with something that, like, works a little bit better for us not spending our plowing time and our resources and having our park damaged. And I understand that it's also not an easy place, right? West End Park is super wet in the spring and it's not a good spot. And I think we're gonna have damage down there no matter what in the spring for us to fix. And, you know, Jerry, I'd like to hear a little bit more from you on that topic. The garbage is unacceptable, but our city should not have to pick up the garbage from that event, and that should be very clear in the special use, in the permit, that is done by not our city, but the event. And so I feel like there's some things that we could do within the event, like you said, like in the clause. I mean, I run special use events for the Forest Service, and it's pretty clear. If there's stuff left, they come back and get it, or they get fined, or they don't get there, and we hold a retainer. There's all sorts of things that we can do. And I don't think the money that we're talking about, okay, it's $4,000. Our budget that we're talking about tonight is $2.8 million. So, you know, I just feel like we can make some negotiations and not have to be like, oh, sorry, we're not gonna, approve this and you take your event somewhere else. Because I certainly don't want the event to be anywhere else but our community. That's what I have to say.
I'm wondering if there are any liability issues for the city by allowing someone else to plow on city property. Is that something that is an issue with the insurance company or anything like that?
So in answer to that question, the basic premise is if the council allows something to be on the city's property, you are responsible for it. So if you're going to allow someone else to do plowing for you or to do anything, you are on the line for workman's comp or any damage that may occur.
You specifically.
The city.
Is there not some kind of an agreement that we can do? I mean, we do this on federal land all the time where we enter into an agreement. And isn't there some tools besides just saying we're liable?
Yes, there could be agreements for that, and I'm sure Scott was gonna get there, but
Oh, sorry.
if the other party doesn't fulfill their side of the agreement, the city's on the hook.
Yeah.
The city cannot agree and contract away its responsibilities towards the public. It can have agreements where other people would pay the city back for their liabilities, but the city can't get rid of its potential liability.
So that could be potentially
Yes.
part of an MOU.
Yes,
Um,
and that would probably be 99% of the time there aren't any issues, but.
One thing that I noticed was that the police chief's request to have the wristbands wasn't included in the details anyway, but that, I'm not exactly sure of the process here. If this is approved, are we able to include details like that in the actual MOU? Because this isn't the MOU, this is just the request for the MOU. And you're welcome to come forward, Madam Chair, please, and help us out here.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'll pick that up a little bit. Is that okay?
Yes,
Or
thank
better?
you.
All right. I maybe could make just a couple points on a few things that came up, but I certainly can address the MOU as well. And my name is Ben Thone. I don't currently live in the city of Washburn. I grew up here. I live in Duluth, but I spend as much of my free time back here as I can and live on a boat between Washburn and Bayfield when weather allows. Also present tonight is Tom Fitz, another board member for Book Across the Bay, who may jump in if I miss something or if he can add anything else. In regard to prior damage from Book Across the Bay, I think we're probably referencing a picnic table that Tony had mentioned, I think in our last phone call a week or so ago. He found out about it, I believe just a few weeks prior as well. That's certainly something that Book Across the Bay would be very amenable to providing compensation for. There was never, to my knowledge or to Book's knowledge, a bill presented for that. So certainly that, moving forward, I believe one year Tony and I had navigated through a fire pit or a fire ring that was damaged as well. And that I don't think either party carried that farther than the conversation about it. But those sorts of things I think would, on behalf of Book, would be a very simple clause where, kind of you break it, you buy it sort of concept, no different than the pavilion, for instance, as we've used that, we've made repairs to damages or that sort of thing. So I think that's probably a very easy thing we could outline in the MOU. As far as cleanup goes, Book is a 100% volunteer run. I think we're all very clear on that. And we've got several different work groups who earn percentages of the proceeds Book raises for given tasks. Trash and cleanup is one of those, and that group changes year to year. All the groups have the potential to change, but at the end of the day, the board of directors for Book Across the Bay are ultimately responsible for park cleanup. And historically, we've communicated very well with the Public Works Director and city representative, whether that be Tony or other city employees, to verify that at the end of the event, the park is in a satisfactory state. And I believe we've got an email thread of that for this past season, verifying that things were complete and up to par. Now, of course, snow falls and things happen, or a snowstorm Saturday night into Sunday could delay cleanup. It wouldn't be uncommon that Andy Matthews or myself are wearing a pair of waders, or we spring trudging through ice fisherman debris and ice fisherman ruts in a wet West End park, picking up whatever garbage may be left, whether it was Book or otherwise. So I think that's a relatively easy thing we could outline in an MOU also. Regarding the insurance, I just want to make a note to make sure everybody is aware. Book Across the Bay does have an insurance policy for both its participants, its board of directors, equipment Book owns, and it's an umbrella policy. I do provide a record of that, or Book does, to Tony. I think we could outline, or that policy would outline, some of the liability regarding the plowing. Not being an attorney or an insurance person myself, I don't know all of the details of that, but I do know that our policy covers things like volunteer operators in Book Across the Bay equipment that we have functioning around the event between both the lake and the city of Ashland and Washburn that we've used for years. So I just wanted to make a note as we continue to talk about insurance and liability that policy does exist.
Any other questions?
The city,
Go ahead,
the city
Tom.
can be additionally named insured in that policy.
That would be an option. Yeah,
That's a common policy, common practice.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That's another detail that would be good to include, I think, in the MOU.
Sure.
Karen?
Ben, what is the registration fee?
$30.
When was it last increased?
The quick answer to that is 2004. The follow-up answer to that is historically Book has had a tiered pricing system where if you register before a certain date, the fee is $25. And then it goes up to 30 as we get closer to the event. There used to be, I believe in 2018 was the last year we had a student fee. We skipped the student fee 1 year to help recover from a financial hardship with a machine that Book Across the Bay owns, and then reinstated that. So the fee is currently $30 for anybody right now, and that will not go up this year for this book.
And there is a student fee?
There is a student fee, yes. And that's 20.
My question for you, Ben, is did you happen to have a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting when Dalt was here talking with us about this last December?
I did not review those minutes. That the gist of that meeting came up briefly between Tony and I, and Dalt was near the Book Across the Bay, certainly a big supporter, not a formal board member.
Sure.
So I guess I would say
Was
casually
he a new
versed.
board member at the
He
time?
was a new board.
He was a new- I think he was a new- he said he was a new board.
Sure.
Regardless, just the detail that I want to bring back is when we had the ongoing discussion about the fees.
Yep.
One of the questions that I asked was, are there other events that have to pay fees to municipalities? And I kind of knew the answer to that before I
Sure.
asked the question. And I know that normally events do have to pay for different services. Now, it is one thing if the city would allow the book to do their own work, that's alleviating that cost in that way.
Sure.
And so maybe if this is the motion on the table, we don't need to go into that other option. But if there were costs incurred The idea that came up was, as they do for the Berkey, to tack on a $1 or $2 fee per registrant, that would actually bring in some money that would be available then to go to the city to pay those fees. So just to keep in mind that there are other options potentially if this doesn't work out, exactly one way, to look at it another way. And I do want to reiterate, of course, the value of the book, to everybody in the wintertime. It's a valuable and welcomed event bringing people to town. Absolutely. I saw Tom first and then Karen.
When I was talking about the garbage that was down there, I ice fish, so I don't go driving on that grass where it's wet. But there was slabwood, there was pine trees down there. None of that we use when we ice fish. That's what was left, sitting down there piled up against the trees at the end of West End Park, and was there in the spring.
Sure.
I'm not against the book.
Yeah, of course.
I'm all for it, but if you guys can't clean up, and the city has to do it, then we should get paid for that.
Sure. And that, I don't think Book Across the Bay would argue that. I would extend the courtesy or I guess Book would expect an extended courtesy of a phone call and the chance to remedy an issue like that on our own accord, whether it be a volunteer group or the board of directors. To be clear as well, Book certainly has no intention of putting out the city. For the past 25 years, with one COVID year in there as a skip, the one and only cancellation, has had a tremendous relationship with both the city of Ashland and Washburn. The last, I want to say 12 years, the race has ended in Washburn every year, and the city is a wonderful host with historically a very helpful public works department, city administration, police, and so on. So that, Tom, I can speak for the entire board as residents and people that grew up here. We wouldn't like to see that at West End Park either. And while I think our cleanup team does a nice job, like I said, snow or certain weather variations can throw a wrench in that. Perhaps part of the MOU would outline a spring verification by Public Works or somebody on the administration with some sort of follow-up cleanup as a simple remedy.
Karen? Nope. Jen?
Yeah, and I do think the more we can do to try to figure out the less impact on the city, and it's just simply because our cities are already taxed, right? And like our staff has got a lot going on, and particularly in the next couple of years, with our downtown highway project and such. So it seems to me when I look at it, the biggest cost is the plowing that the city is undertaking, and so Jerry, I guess I'd like to hear a little bit from you in terms of your thoughts on that, because when I read that the book would prefer for us not to plow the event site, but yet we're doing it, and that's $3,500, that just kind of seems like a no-brainer if we can figure out the liability issue.
And is it liability of the damage, and then how does that?
Stepping into the hot seat here.
Yeah.
My name's getting thrown around a lot.
Because if
By the
Good to see
way,
you, Jerry.
I love Book Across the Bay. I was there last year. I had a hoot. I plan on
Yeah.
being there this year. So this is where when I have a job and it's like questions are asked of me and I just want to bring to light. So a couple of concerns was, first of all, I was asked to put together what the city had spent for prepping for Book Across the Bay. So that's what we did. Because we really didn't have that number going throughout the year. So we took what we had, tracked it, that's what we came up with. Okay, so provided those numbers. So then it was brought up about Book Across the Bay, plowing and doing stuff. And my consensus is you're opening a Pandora's box. If you allow Book Across the Bay to do the plowing and these other services on city property, and we're rendering those services, what's going to happen with the next vendor and the next vendor? And my big theory behind my job is what you do for one, you have to do for all. So if they're asking this to Public Works and we're going to allow it, then the next person that comes along, you're going to have to allow it. I just want you to think about that. I do have some, I'm not crazy about letting them doing it. I can't believe that for what we performed for you, and I believe we did a great job in providing, getting everything done and opened up, that, you do have volunteers, but you have trucks, equipment, it's hard, let me tell you, we use our large stuff to do it. It's not like you can do it with a pickup. I mean, you can, but damage it, you're tentatively taking and wear and tear, you know, and whether you're using something else. But again, my whole thing behind this and asking the question is, and how you decide is up to you, but when you allow somebody else to do these things, you're opening the door for the next person. Well, instead of Public Works assisting with this, we're just gonna do it. Next thing you know, you have people throughout the city just performing things and doing things, and you lose control of your ability to control those different events. So if we say okay to this, and now Brownstone comes and says, well, hey, you're allowing them to do this. Now, can we do this? Can we utilize the city property? You're allowing them to do it, you know? My thought was we really need to think about, you know, where we go with this and what we're gonna allow to happen, because that's gonna set a precedence in the future.
Would you mind painting a picture for us all of what you fear evolving from this?
Well, you never know who's gonna open up, you know, who's gonna come to the city next and what events, and again, what you do for one, you have to do for others. So I'm not saying it's gonna be a specific same thing, but now you're honoring them to utilize city property, do things to it. So why wouldn't somebody else that was wanting to utilize city property say, well, we'll start taking care of this, or we'll do this? You know, you just never know. So my thought process behind it was, you know, and it is city property. We don't allow plowing on city property, so we allow them to plow on city property, push snow around. Then who comes next is, well, we want to do it, you know, because I'm pretty adamant through winter. I don't allow people to push snow around on city property. You know, we just don't allow that. And now we do, so what's going to stop somebody else from coming and saying, you know, it hasn't happened, but it can happen.
Jen has a comment, I think, and I was gonna ask you to comment on that, with your experience with MOUs and agreements.
Yeah. So I completely feel the pain. And I feel like this is happening all over the country with all sorts of public lands and state lands. And the bottom line is like, I think that when we're scared about taking precedent, I think it is something to be cautious of. But also we have to remember, like, this is an organization that has insurance, that has a liability, that we go into an agreement. And that's different than somebody coming up and saying, oh, hey, I don't like the way you plow my property and I want to do this. And so I feel that in this day and age, with limited budgets and all this kind of stuff, we have to start to open our minds a little bit and allowing things, and we can always pull back. Like if it doesn't work, then we have some experience that says it's not gonna work. Right now, I gotta tell you, the US Forest Service is letting county, you know, like actually, you know, mark timber and perform timber sales on, you know, public land. And when they went to do this, we were like, oh my gosh, there is no way we can let you do that. Like that is like, and we're doing all sorts of things like that across the country. And I know like counties and states and stuff are starting to do these kind of things with groups. And it's not, I think as long as we have the mechanism in place and we have the backup plan, we have everything legality wise, and that's what I'm looking at, you know, like making sure that we're covered. And then we build on those experiences, and those that don't work out, we don't do. And those that work out with a partner for a huge event, I think we have to start putting, you know, and I think we're not talking something that we're gonna, I don't know, you know, like the stakes, you know, we gotta think about what are the costs and the benefits. And I don't think we're gonna do it everywhere, and I'll be really clear, I don't think we're gonna be setting a precedent here. And I think we're gonna have to start to think about these kind of things with organizations that have the structure and have the agreements in place. But I hear you.
Well, I'm just,
think
because
it's really
my phone
cautious.
rings is gonna be like, well, you did this for them,
Yeah,
now,
for sure.
you know, you're gonna do this for me, and that happens to me all the time. That's why I try
Yeah.
to say, what you do for one, you have to do for all,
And
you know?
And that's true to a certain extent, but if you can explain why this is different, and we have,
Well, that's where you come in,
Process,
because see,
you
then
know,
when they
in
say,
place.
why did you ask, well, that's what they decided, I'm gonna.
Well, and
that's what I-
it shouldn't take
you
a
know.
lot of your time, there should be.
hold on one second, we got a lot of conversations going on. First, let me finish, and then Carl, and then Laura, and then Dave, I know had a comment as
And
well.
I just finished by saying, like,
Sure.
for example, we could have a big company come in and want to do kayaking, right? Like they're doing right now and say, you know what, you're not doing a great job at the beach. We can do a better job, Public Works, maintaining that beach, cleaning that beach, collecting fees on that beach. And those are the kind of things that we might want to entertain in the future, because we don't have a huge public works staff, right? We keep talking about how we have all this stuff and we might have to start relying, concessioning out campgrounds. There's all sorts of things that I think don't set precedent. And I think each situation is different, and I just think we have to be clear about that.
And the thing that does make this different, as I'm thinking about it, as we're talking, is that this is a longstanding event that is an official organization that is registered, that has insurance, that has taken responsibility for things over the years. Although, obviously, if this is approved, we would still have to come up with that detailed MOU and have that, vetted by Max, and then we would have to approve the MOU. I don't know if the council would have to approve the MOU as a next step.
If we can get general guidelines together, the council wouldn't have to necessarily approve it. As long, the council would have to authorize city staff to enter into this MOU with XYZ conditions.
Okay, does that
Or
answer
council
your
can require it to come back.
We don't know who's gonna do the plowing right now. We're talking about a volunteer, right?
Well, their organization,
But
it's someone in their organization
Someone-
with their equipment.
you don't have the snow plowing equipment, right?
We do. We own, Book across, two board members of Book own pickups personally with plows. Book as a LLC also owns Bombardier ME Plus 275 ski hill groomer. Picture a 26,000 pound track machine with a 13-way blade and a power
Going
tiller.
through the water, right?
Correct, yes.
Yes, that one. Okay, so then Laura, go ahead and
Well,
jump in.
I would like to hear any ideas for amendments if we needed to make sure everything gets covered, but it seems like an opportunity for any debate that everyone should hear, and not just a few in these meetings where it almost sounds like when stories come back to us, it's the butting of heads of this happened, nobody paid, and everybody's looking like the bad guy, when I think everybody wants to get along. So if there's something that has not been dealt with or addressed in the past, it would be nice to hear it now. You've been doing this a while, Scott, and Jen, I know Mary, you've been at this a while. So, and I feel like I've heard stories from at least the two of you, if not more, that there are issues that I feel like could be cleared up. And I'd like to know that is something, because I feel, I'm getting the feeling that we're very reasonable people here that want to do a good thing and make it possible. And things like the plowing, I would like to hear why, specifically why it is important for you guys to do the plowing on your own, and to know that there would be something signed, an agreement that says that you will keep in touch closely with Jerry about what he expects and follow up on spring damage or garbage pickup or whatever need be, but have this communication keep happening with the Public Works Department. So.
Certainly.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the plowing, specifically to Book, the intent for plowing that spot at West End Park is to clear an area roughly 120 feet by 700 feet to stand our 2 tents that we stitched together for the finish party. When that area is plowed early or annually throughout the year, the ground freezes very deep. Drilling those stakes in to support the tent becomes a task. When the ground is cleared on that tent line specifically, say 4 to 5 days prior to standing the tent, it's frozen, of course, because where we live, but not nearly to the depth of bare grass, which makes plowing that drilling those tent stakes significantly easier. And that's really the prime reason that Book would like to plow that area exclusively. Beyond that, And I do want to note that the Public Works Department has done a phenomenal job, and they've certainly come down with different pieces of equipment in past years and helped as Book has evolved over the past 24 years to be able to have more resources of its own and a wider network of resources available, things like plows and machines and partnerships with local plumbing vendors who have skid steers with snow blowers and that sort of thing. So as that's evolved, the need has changed over the years, but certainly is incredibly appreciative of Public Works and Jerry and Bob and Ron Leno and the whole list over the last years. So I hope that answers the question as to why the plowing. Beyond that, there's a couple little kind of oddball things from power supply to the tent. It runs through kind of a significant or a specific section of trees and campground that when that's cleared perfectly, it makes quite frankly, volunteer children plugging in extension cords are a lot easier to coordinate when we can tell them, go through that snowbank. That's plowed, opposed to working with berms from city machines that, are sometimes wherever they need to be, which no fault of Public Works, just not as convenient as St. Andrew or myself strategically moving snow to some of those special pockets. So it's really a convenience and ease of setup for a volunteer group. And Book itself, as I think we all have experienced, is very weather dependent and very last minute. If Book could be planned now and we knew that the tent would go here and this exact detail would be there, very different ballgame, but we're dealing with sometimes moment by moment overnight adjustments to make the event go, whether it be standing the tent or the trail or where the actual finish line will be on West End Beach. So those details all kind of culminate into a very, in the moment, I think is the best way to describe it, event that takes a lot of, we have to do this now to make it work in regards to plowing and snow prep and that sort of thing.
All right, then Dave and then Mary.
So, last year, this is almost an identical conversation from last year. And we urged the board of directors for Book Across the Bay to raise their fee to incorporate or to raise the money it would cost to offset any expenses incurred by the city. So, I mean, you haven't raised your rates in, what was it, since 2008 or something?
I think 11 to 12 years, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is really fairly simple, I think. And this is why we urged you last year to consider this, is if it's $3,500 and you get 3,000 participants, you raise the rates to $35 and whatever the expense is going to be, you're going to be covered. That being said, I mean, I'm an advocate of Book Across the Bay, and any of them, quite honestly, that you strap boards on your feet. I'm a skier and I advocate for any of this, and I support you guys. And last year we supported you in this endeavor. I don't know how MOUs and that kind of thing are, getting into those deals. I just don't. I think this could be a lot simpler of a deal, and I think it's a matter of Book Across the Bay paying a fee to the city to move the snow out of the way, or whatever we have to do down there. But for this year, I think we should, again, you're obviously not prepared to pay a $4,000 fee or $3,500. I think we should consider allowing it again. But I would urge you, because if an MOU can't be agreed upon, someone's gonna have to be compensated. Every other city gets compensated for this type of deal, and I think we just need to move down that avenue rather than getting into MOUs.
And before you go, Mary, just to draw attention to there is some other cost involved by the city, not just the plowing. And so as we're sorting through what would be best for the organization in terms of who does the plowing where, and I don't know if that's all of the plowing or just right at the event site in the parking areas or something that you prefer. Maybe the city has better equipment for moving that kind of snow. I don't know. TBD, but some of this stuff is still gonna have to happen. Police coverage, extra administrative costs. So when does your registration start?
Registration is open.
You did open registration
Yes.
already before we came to an agreement with you.
Yes, and that's a standard practice.
Okay, so the thing that gives me a little heartburn there is that we've been trying to resolve this
Sure.
for a long time, and we hadn't resolved it yet. And one of the suggestions was, about the fee thing. And so it would have been nice if we had come to an agreement prior to your registration opening, but.
I'd like to give just a moment of background on the fee. Book Across the Bay initially, of course, in the very early year was a fundraiser for the public library, hence the name. Then it evolved into a partnership with the Tri-County Medical Society. And then it's evolved into this work group program. The overall 25-year, about to be 26-year long purpose of Book is community well-being, youth engagement, regardless of socioeconomic status. So Book has taken major steps every of those 25 years to keep the fee affordable so that families in Washburn, in Bayfield, in Ashland, Maringo, Mellon, where the average income is whatever it is, can participate. A family of coming to Book at $140, that could, at 30 a person, that is very counterintuitive. While Book is very proud that participants most years from 35, 40, 1 year, I think 42 different states. Primarily what we do is have our neighbors come out and our friends and our students in Mellon and Maringo and Ashland and Washburn who probably will never ski the Berkey for $115 a person or whatever that fee is. So the fee schedule for Book is something we're very passionate about not increasing.
Okay, Mary.
I strongly agree with everything Dave said. As you spoke about not getting together, we set an April time period for those meetings to happen before you would open registration. So that's already come and gone. And as a responsible group in the city as well with its business, should have stepped forward some. There were minutes from those meetings that would have been in our council meetings when we talked, and it goes back to Richard Abel sitting at this table as well. So it's not just the last 2 years. It was prior to COVID that we've been talking. And we gave up asking for money because it was put on your radar now. And then you came back again, weren't prepared yet, so we let it go again. And then we came forward again with a fee, but we didn't have the figures. And that was true. So we let it go again. But we have been kicking this can down the road and coming late in the game, and then us standing here having made plans for many years and nothing's coming together. So that's a shameful thing. The glow that exists around Book Across the Bay, every single one of us at the table understands it. And we do understand the economics as well. And to bring the health and well-being of families to the table, to me, is a little out of the business realm that we're talking about now. We also have to trust Jerry because we pay him. We've got him staying here. We pay him for his opinion. I would not want anybody other than the city crew plowing that area down there. There's some little individual places that you can, or Jerry can agree with you on, and your pickup truck's fine. But to have somebody else take care of our property that way, absolutely not. And to make an agreement and then have the damages be paid after the fact, I don't know. Have you guys ever been paid for damages after the fact sometimes? So no, city should plow. The agreements with the fine details, I'd take $1,500 right now this year to get a budget started for Book Across the Bay. But to throw it all to naught and then to quietly say in your email, then we would think about moving out of Washburn. I thought that was a little, and it's not worthy of your group to say something like that. I was upsetting. I was not surprised to get this email because the can has been kicked year after year. We've bent over, and now we have an opinion, we have numbers, and here we are again. You're right, an identical conversation to last year.
Ben, if you want to respond, and then Tony,
I just, Melissa has her hand up on it.
okay, and then Jen. So that would be, Tony was waving for Melissa there. Melissa, if you want to go ahead.
Do you hear that, Melissa?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So again, as everybody has said, we are all supporters of this event and activity. It does bring people to the area. It helps with obviously room tax, things like that. Unfortunately, I have been at a lot of these meetings in the past where promises have been made, and I have not seen any of them come to fruition. This last year, communication specifically between the Chamber and Ben has been non-existent, especially in the return of some of our property from last year. And I'm just concerned that, like Mary and Dave have said, it's always going to continue to be pushed off, and nothing's going to come to a head and be agreed upon. I only give this as a cautionary tale of what we have gone through, and then also the fact that I have been in on some of these meetings with the city for this in the past, and everything that has been promised just has not happened. So that is my caution.
Can you give us some examples, kind of like what Laura was talking about? Sometimes we just say, it's been promised, we haven't done anything. Are you talking specifically
absolutely.
like conversations happening?
Yeah, so during one of the conversations, and I believe it was at City Hall, it was Ben, Mary, myself, Tony. I believe there was another representative, a female from Book. Part of the request was emails that we could use to market to the people that were coming, so that we could let them know, about the area that they were coming to, get information about visiting. We were promised that never happened. We were, I'm trying to think, in that same conversation, again, it was, we'll work with you to come up with a plan to pay for EMS services, which I've not heard brought up tonight. We will work with you to come up with a plan for paying, for the services that you're requesting. And again, I've been at the Chamber for 4 years and nothing has happened. This year, we put up a banner that the Chamber and Karen worked together to create. This was the second year it was in use to let people know that they were actually coming into Washburn. I requested that back because we had not gotten it back in May. I contacted every possible way that I had contact information for, so that we could have it in time for Superior Vistas. I was no phone calls, no emails, no messages were returned. A board member finally got on the phone, called, was answered right away, was promised that our banner would be returned. And I think 2 days before Superior Vistas, somebody dropped off a banner that is not our banner. We still have not been contacted or had that property returned. So again, those are just some examples of things that I personally have had to deal with or that I've personally heard. I'm sure there's others, but that's my cautionary tale. And don't worry, I'm not asking to mow the lawn for brownstone or anything coming up. Don't worry about that. And like we've said before in the past, if this is something that comes to fruition where you are expecting events to pay for services that the city provides, the Chamber has said that we will pay for those services.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Did we have someone with their hand up after Jen? That was you, right? Do you still wanna?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I guess that my last comment is, again, maybe kids keep saying this, but like, so look across the bay. I mean, here you talk about you've dispersed over $250,000, right? We have a very large budget too for the city that because I shouldn't say large, but okay, we have a budget that we deal with. We have a ton of things going on too that we disperse, and we're going over our budget tonight. We have very little room to work in, even though we have a large budget, and I'm sure you guys do too. But the amount of money that we're talking about here of $4,000, $3,500, or well, maybe a little bit more than that when you look at the police department. I mean, you would just think that at some level, we could work out some kind of situation where there could be some type of compensation. I mean, like you said, even if it's $1,500 and we start to think about the plowing and just working more together cohesively, it's just super disappointing. I mean, like to hear, the concerns from our chamber. I mean, I would think that you would want the help from our chamber and City of Ashland. And I think in your letter, you talk about the precedent if we were to pay Washburn. Well, is Ashland asking you for money too? So, I mean, maybe Lord forbid, the 3 organizations sit down and talk about what's being done in Ashland. Are they plowing? How we can all work together. I mean, I just think in this day and age, I mean, frankly, a pissing match over $4,500 for an event that brings $250,000 is just a disappointment. And I'm done.
Okay. One comment I want to make quick before you go, Laura, is it was mentioned that we haven't made progress. And I disagree with that statement because we have addressed things. Every time it comes back, something gets addressed. So the change that we made last year was that, we didn't provide the amount of EMS service, and that reduced that cost. Now we're talking about changing how plowing gets done to reduce that cost. So, there are solutions that we're trying to work on. Unfortunately, it's just at a snail's pace, and we haven't gotten further along in that process sooner. But I do like the fact that we're working on ways to reduce those costs. And that way it's helping you not have to pay that cost, and it's helping us not to have to expend those costs. So we've made some progress. So I just wanted to point that out before we go on. Ben, did you want to respond before Laura?
Sure, just briefly, I just want to clarify, the chamber is a separate private organization, separate of the city, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then I guess most of Melissa's comments can be dealt with her, but the banner, for instance, a banner was left out for Book to pick up. Book hung it up on behalf of the banner. It was lost by volunteers. We replaced it from Heart Graphics with 2 identical banners based on the images we had. So I think I point that out as a remedy of we were left out 1 to hang up on behalf. It was damaged, lost, repaired, it's gone. We replaced it with 2. One's of the similar size and 1 larger one for the Bike Vista user, that sort of thing. So just as a precedent of an understanding that when things go wrong, Book is happy to repair those and replace those. Outside of that, I do agree, Mary, the EMS was something that we, working with the EMS director, we came to a resolution on. And the chamber not being involved in that, the chamber isn't involved in Book and doesn't contribute to Book. So knowledge of that interaction wouldn't exist. Regarding an email list, that's property of Book Across the Bay, and giving that info out just isn't something that happens. But at the end of the day, the sentiment from Book Across the Bay is that several $100,000 over the course of 25 years is relatively impressive for a small community and a volunteer-run organization. The reality is that year to year, on a bad turnout year, a weather year, a cancellation year, costs for Book Across the Bay don't go away. And there's no other alternative to bring funds in. So those costs end up being carried by board members personally from year to year or several years, depending on the severity of a cost. And that from Book Across the Bay isn't a sustainable plan. That's why we went to the work group program. So the reason Book is so solid in our viewpoint is that we don't want to take money away from our Washburn Music Boosters, our Washburn baseball team, which is funded by, quite positive, solely by Book Across the Bay, and reallocate that to the city administration. That's just not something that the board feels is a good move for the long-term viability of the volunteer groups that have to exist for Book to happen year to year. So that's why the funds are very protective in that they go back to the community, to the groups that make the event happen. And the city of Ashland, wonderful partnership for the past 25 years as well. No fee has been requested from them. We meet with them regularly, similar to this, and have a wonderful working agreement in place.
And then Laura, did you have something?
Well, it's changed a lot, but I really appreciated the comments from Councilor Anderson and Graf about not wanting to continue to send this down the road, because as people in your board change, and we've all had this discussion now, nobody wants to keep having it and have nothing change. So I'm looking for any ideas from either party about how we can go forward to let things keep happening. And we could just say, okay, we really need to make sure these costs are covered, and if the board decides that they aren't gonna have it here, then I guess, okay, but I feel like it really could be figured out in the meantime. If that means that there's an extra $5 added on, it doesn't seem unreasonable to make it in general and then have exceptions or scholarships or something for locals, families. I think there are ways to increase those costs and have your board be able to set aside costs for those tough years, and so that you aren't having to take out your pockets, because I understand that is how it works when you care about something, and it is run by so many hardworking people. And again, I would like to point out that it is people, and so mistakes happen, and as long as it gets communicated, things can get cleared up. And I want to be sure that that's going to keep happening. So, which brings us back to Jerry. Do you feel like that when you don't want to set a precedent, do you feel like there is some method by which you can communicate with or have a discussion about expectations, or know that your bases are covered, so that you can have special situations like, in our planning and zoning world, and conditional use permits for so many things, this could be like that, where it helps you out so you don't have as many man hours. I mean, you've already got people working overtime and around the clock during big snowfalls. So it seems like it could be a benefit to have that off your shoulders if your concerns are alleviated. Do you feel like that's possible?
I just expressed my concerns.
Great.
I mean, just airing it
They're
out,
valid.
just talking, so.
Yeah.
Again, my big thing is I hear it all the time. You did this for this person, you did that for that person, so try to keep it fair across the board, And, I had from, not only from, I have to take a look at it when we provide services for people, even residents. There's certain things we do and don't do because it's taxpayers' money. It's not my decision whether I spend taxpayers' dollars doing this or doing that. That's for your decision to make, If you decide, we're gonna do it and we're gonna cover the cost, then that's what we'll do. If they're gonna pay for those services, that's what we're gonna do. We provide you with the information and our concerns, and you pick it up from there, Could they do it? Yes. Is there any concern with it? I've expressed my concern. They've heard me out, all you can do is see what happens, I mean.
Okay, sorry, Tom.
I can't remember if it was 20 or if it was Max that had said that they were paying employees to do certain things. I do remember that coming up, where they were talking about the cleanup. They were paying, it was like $10,000 they paid out for people doing cleaning or some volunteer, whatever it was.
Oh, that's their casual labor.
Okay, the casual labor.
Which I assume is they reference the volunteer groups.
Right, the volunteer.
Yeah, the work groups we call them paid work groups. So if the total proceeds is $10, then every work group who signs up for a different task, the music boosters, for example, typically produce the chili, that's worth a set percentage, call it 5%, and that's not actually that percentage, but for round numbers, that's how that works. So the trash team would earn 2% or whatever it may be.
Maybe the city could get a percent.
That's been offered.
This is my point with all words. We went through this last year. You guys did not show up. There was nothing done that we had asked to be done. And now you're opening up again before, not this one because it's already too late now, but for the next book across the page, you guys have to get with us and we have to come up with a deal.
And we did meet, and
There was a
at
meeting,
the end of the day, the decision was made that no, would not take those funds from the work groups to the city administration, and the proposal was adjusted. That book would take on its own plowing and reduce that cost from the city. So while I hear you out and respect you, I counter with there was a meeting and there was a decision made from that, and that's why we're here tonight.
Okay, Mary?
2 questions. When, is it a generalization when you say the city of Ashland, or do you work with the Ashland Chamber and the city of Ashland?
Both the Ashland Chamber and then separately the Public Works Department of the city.
So coming in at the city level, because chamber is chamber.
Sure.
What do they do for you?
Tom, you can maybe speak to that slightly better than I, but they do some plowing at Maslowski Beach. However, we've been very specific to not plow certain aspects of the beach. They deliver Christmas trees to an area just west of Maslowski.
Yeah.
And they haul those trees back after the event. They deliver barricades, parking cones, that sort of thing.
Those down to the beach?
Correct.
Because at our last meeting, we did ask if the city of Ashland asked for reimbursement too, and in our notes, it says like they did, and they also were told no.
Yeah, the Parks and Rec Department had asked for funds, and after meeting with Parks and Rec and Public Works, and one other kind of subcommittee, I believe that had something to do with the Kite Festival, everybody walked away from the table with a clear understanding of how, for instance, the Parks Committee could earn funds by hosting that Kite Festival or that sort of thing. The city itself and the Public Works Department didn't want or request money from the organization to the city administration. At the time, I think essentially a communication breakdown between the two of what exactly they were looking for funding for. But meeting and coming up with a work group program was the resolution to that.
Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to you, Scott, if you still have a thought.
So part of in listening to what's going on here, part of it is it's an incompatible goal. You heard that they would prefer to have the area plowed late so it doesn't freeze as deep. It's the city's preference that it is plowed early on so that it does freeze, because then that protects the ground from other damage later on. So that's where there's an incompatibility on what we're attempting to accomplish here. So just keep that in mind.
That's helpful.
Okay,
And
where are we?
what do you say to that?
Yeah, I don't disagree. Those are certainly competing aspects of that tent line where the stakes are drilled. Some of the damage to the turf, the topsoil, the walking surface, if you will, that tent is heated to around 70 degrees for about 20 hours. So regardless of when the plowing occurs, at least several inches of that topsoil are going to be murky, muddy after 20 hours of 70-degree heat in a tent. And that's been the case for all 25 years. So I think if the damage to property or the damage to the topsoil were the issue at hand, that would be regardless of maintaining plowing all season long or not. And like we discussed earlier, it could be something that if the city determined there were ruts that needed to fill with topsoil or plant or that sort of thing, that seems like a rather easy thing to navigate through in the spring. no different than a cleanup aspect or something like that.
So that just undermines any kind of damages we may go after if that were to happen. Having to understand what you just said, soft and murky for 20 hours. What we look at in the spring is that awful mess that is down there. And part of that, ruts aside, would be because of the book across the bay. Possibly. So to say that we're gonna get money back in damages is probably a non-starter for that. I still go back to, regardless of any of that, I want the professionals plowing city property. So that would be my take on this one. Moving forward with the permits is, I mean, we're already kicking this around now and you're saying there's no money positively. And once again, you said you would be taking it away from the music department and another department. That doesn't feel real good when we're sitting here at the table.
We agree. We feel the same way, and that's why we're here.
So, I mean, I've been board president of a nonprofit outdoor education foundation for the last several years. Recently stepped down, and I understand what it takes to make nonprofits happen and provide a service for the community at a very reasonable cost. However, there are times when those hard decisions need to be made, and we had to make them. And I think you're really behind the eight ball here on your fee. I mean, it's a no-brainer. A $35 fee isn't going to do anybody. You could even, and this is just a word of advice, I mean, you could institute a locals discount of $5 and probably still the amount of non-local folks who have, I guarantee you, will have no problem paying $35 for a night of fun. I would just urge you to really consider that. And I know it's tough because no one likes to raise money on local people, but it's something I think that's, in my opinion, the only way the city and Book Across the Bay are going to come to an agreement. And I would, the city of Bayfield charges the chamber for Apple Fest. There's just a lot of things that happen, and I don't think the taxpayers of Washburn should continue to offset a nonprofit's costs to do business. And me as a business owner on Main Street, love that you guys are here in February. You know, everyone in February here is sucking wind, trying to make ends meet, and it's a nice boost to the economy. There has to be a way that we can work this out. I think it's fairly easy.
Okay, Laura, and then we need to.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt anything there either, but if you have any response to any of that, but, well, I don't know, I'm concerned that there is no resolution yet. It doesn't sound like there is.
Well, and I think I'd like to say that if there isn't a resolution tonight, and if for some reason this doesn't get approved, I hope that's not the end of the conversation, and we can circle back and try to work through some of this to get to a place that will be amenable. But we do have a motion and a second on the table that I would like to call to a vote.
I move to amend the motion to include the city providing the snow plowing service and paying for the direct cost to do that.
Whose motion was it? Was it Laura's motion?
Yeah. Well, okay, so that brings me to the question that I was trying to remember a moment ago.
Okay, I need a second to
I
the
will second
amendment.
that.
Okay, so someone else can amend the motion? Okay. So there's a second to so do we vote on the amendment first? All in favor of that amendment,
You said the
signify by, and it's to change who's doing the plowing. So, to the city.
Specify.
To specify that,
Specify the city does. the most.
specify that the city does the plowing is the amendment. So-
And charge for the direct cost to do that.
Oh, I didn't hear that either.
I didn't either.
Okay, so the amendment, the motion is to amend to specify that the city would do the plowing and would get reimbursed for that amount. Is there a second to that amendment?
Yes. I'll second that.
Okay. Any questions or discussion on the amendment? Laura?
Well, these costs, as stated, is there a way to reduce those costs, though, that would make it? Okay, what I was trying to ask before was about your deal with Ashland. They wanted to bring some fees, correct? And you worked with them to find a way to,
A subcommittee of the Parks and Rec Department, I believe, wanted to clarify a way they could earn funding. So that meeting was separate of the city administration. And that was something that, part of Book's intent and purpose is that other nonprofit organizations benefit from the funds. So that's where that meeting ended.
So the city public works did not request funds specifically for reimbursement?
Correct.
It was like a subcommittee of the Parks and Rec.
which is another point. They have a Parks and Rec department and subcommittee, and they have a lot more money and people to work with. So this is gonna take a lot more effort and communication because there are many fewer people to try to.
So I want to just bring us back here to the amendment. So there's a motion and a second for the amendment. Does anyone have any questions specifically about that amendment right now? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Do we need a roll call? Or show of hands? Let's do show of hands for ayes. And opposed.
Who's on this side?
Nobody. So 3 in favor, 4 opposed. So the amendment fails. So back to the original motion of whether to approve the request as presented. Are there any further questions or discussion on that item? Max?
Point out here that city's ordinances in chapter 12:1.5 sub L, we already have a provision in here where persons observing city facilities or park space shall be completely responsible for cleaning up the facilities after the event to the satisfaction of city officials. Inadequate cleaning shall result in the permit holders being billed for such cleanup costs. So that ability to charge back any cleanup or repair costs after this event is already in our ordinances. They agree to that when they sign and apply for the permit for the exclusive use of that park property.
Thank you for that.
And, another one, just along those lines, the indemnification and the requirement to provide insurance sufficient to cover, or financial proof to cover any damages. That's also required by the city's park ordinances for the reservation of this park space. So I would say in that, just so we don't further complicate matters, if the MOU was only for those 2 items, I would advise against having an MOU for something we already have in place.
Okay. So all in favor of the
motion?
The motion is to approve the request as presented. Go ahead, question?
So in the MOU, it lays out the 4 things. So what we're approving basically, I guess Max, my question is, when you say, so you would.
We can have an
So do
MOU for
with
that.
these pieces in there?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So I
It
guess
could-
my question, is there anything else that we feel should go in here?
Yes.
That's my question.
So-
We need that as an amendment.
So the wording of this request specifically, I was unclear about that first, where you're talking about the MOU in number 1, but then these other things were still listed. So I think the MOU would have to address everything here, in some form or other, to clarify, what each of these things are talking about. So really, the MOU should be like the headline here, and then
Sure.
the numbered items below it. All of it should be included in the MOU. And the motion was to approve all of these things as presented.
Correct, that was the original motion to get the conversation started. Right. And so,
And that is the motion on the table, and the amendment failed, so now we're back to the original motion.
correct. I guess at the very least, we still have a conversation, or do I have to just do an amendment? Can I propose another amendment?
Yeah.
This is discussion though, right?
Okay, if we're still in discussion, I guess, my thought is that we should have a little bit more here, in the MOU about, just not snow removal, the snow removal from the West End Park tent location, that they're gonna provide that, but I believe that we should at least have something in there that they work, cohesively with their public works director, like, whatever, however we put it, and that this is a trial year, and I think that we have to put some specific things in there in terms of, I'm comfortable doing this for 1 year, and I think that we need to we can have some conversations later, but I think in this MOU, just so that book across the bay is very clear, like, we're gonna try this for this year, and to me, it's a trial year in terms of the snow removal, and that they need to work cohesively with our public works department. I'd like to see that at the very least, because I'm sure maybe you guys do it, but if it's the first year that they're gonna be taking over, that we're not gonna be doing it, and then you already say that we have that in the ordinance, so I think we should refer to our ordinance in this MOU, that, there is gonna be compensation if things aren't, if we have any damage, so I think we should lay out a couple more things in the MOU.
And I don't know that needs to be an amendment to the motion, does it?
I don't know,
So
I'm
much
just
as a direction for the MOU?
Right, and that's
So
fine.
that's what I'd like to know, is if being my motion, I'm torn between, do we retract this and retract my motion and then table it until things are discussed, or do we do this and amend it with a contingency? What would be the most effective way to give the city administration time to discuss and have meetings that should have happened before registration was open? Because clearly they can't up their fees now anyway. So to get this approved, it might be in everyone's best interest to have those meetings before getting their permit.
And I would say, to get things done effectively and efficiently, don't just table the matter. At least make some motion or some direction what you want the city to accomplish. If the council wants to review this final MOU one more time, just to make sure we've incorporated everything and they've agreed to everything, we can do that. But don't just table it and say, hey, find something better and bring it back. Which I don't think you're going to do, but.
And another option could be, like was suggested, you wouldn't have to change your fees necessarily, but you could add an optional, you could add an optional, donation that would go towards operational costs to help offset the burden putting on the event. It would be an optional thing that people could check off and they could fill in however much they want, $1, $5, whatever, doesn't,
$1 would do it under $3,000.
or make it an optional $1 donation, That's something that you could still tack on, that wouldn't be tacking it on, it's making it optional. Anyway, Mary, go ahead.
Sort of, I was looking at the approval of the permit, but take out at this time the snow removal and have that negotiated outside of the approval of this. So we've moved forward, we've approved it, and we will spend the next quick bit of time trying to come together on this.
How the snow removal would occur.
Yeah.
So are you suggesting an amendment to the motion to exclude the snow plowing from the,
If that's what it takes, I
For
would like
now.
that to take out.
I will second that amendment. Is
that what you're,
I would like to see that. Now, how we get that accomplished right now.
so
is
you're
that
not
amendment.
making that motion?
I would,
Amendment.
if that's what it'll take, yes.
That's what it would
Amendment
take,
two.
if you will. Okay, so Mary is making a motion to amend the motion to exclude the snow plowing from the proposed agreement
Which would be item 1B,
until
sub 1,
further.
yes.
And that there would be discussion about it. I mean,
So that
we
you
need
guys
to work
be
out. And
negotiating with.
I will second that amendment.
Okay. Amendment 2, motion by Mary, second by Karen. Are there questions on that amendment? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So
Okay.
we're approving this. Oh, now back to the original motion with the amendment of not including the snow plowing. My brain is getting tired. I'm not even gonna ask. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to approve the request minus the snow plowing portion at this time until further discussions can be had and a new proposal brought forward for that. Quickly. All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much for being here and for putting on such a great event for our community. All right, thanks everyone for getting through that. Now, our next item is discussion and action on proposed 2026 storm water utility budget. You sure you don't want to stay for this one?
Can I be of service? I'm gonna work on an MOU, I think, maybe.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so tab 6 in your packet.
Madam Mayor, since this is a tentative approval, they're pending, yes, the Scott is recommending tentative approval, pending, further detail about some fund sources and costs. I would move that we approve the proposed 2023 stormwater utility budget tentatively, pending additional information that's necessary. Right, Scott?
Can we just approve it?
He was asking for approval.
All of our budgets are tentatively approved that we discuss until December.
Sure.
That's when they're finally approved.
So do we have to make it a tentative approval?
Well, there is the potential, as you go through the remaining items of some changes.
Okay, so do we have to define what tentative means?
As presented to us.
So tentative until further discussion.
It's tentative unless you make changes in other, such as wages, benefits, things of that may affect the budget.
Okay, so the motion is to approve this tentatively.
Correct.
Is there, okay, Tom? So motion by Karen, second by Tom, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item in tab 7, discussion and action on updates to and recommendations on the proposed 2023 general fund capital and debt service budgets.
Madam Mayor, if I may,
Yes, Karen, go
the
ahead.
discussion started. The Finance Committee did spend a fair amount of time going through this budget, looking at, I will indicate that we did not go every single line item, but we looked at certainly each of the categories in terms of where there had been significant cost increase, and we know that fuel and heating have been cost increases. We have been very involved in the discussion in terms of the salary increases and the step increases that we have looked at before. And so we feel pretty confident that this is a solid budget in terms of what our needs are.
And I would just like to add that a couple of things that I noticed weren't in here that have been on our topics of discussion, and I think should be added to the unfunded capital project list are the tennis courts and the sidewalks. I would like to see those listed.
And I hadn't started, I was gonna talk about capital, but that's fine.
Okay, and I just wanted to get it before there was a motion on the table, so go ahead, sorry if you were gonna.
Well, and, you know, the area that we're always most concerned about, I mean, obviously, we need, the budget to get the various departments operating, but we're always concerned about what are the capital projects, what are we gonna be able to do that's new, this year? And you will see that, there are very few things that we are going to be able to do. My standing concern about windows at City Hall is for the first time added as one of the capital budget activities right now.
It was added last year too.
And that's why we're talking about it. I mean, the changes can be made, Jen, and other things can be added in place. But on page 3 of the budget, you will see the proposed capital budget, including, you know, the various things that we, I'm sorry, page 3 is requested but not included. And page 2 is where the expense are for 306. So page 2 of the budget, City Hall, you can see replacement of the AC and air exchange and the windows. Streets and alleys, 112,865 for 2 line items, and snow blower, and that is going to be some switching between EMS and Public Works, because they have some equipment that Jerry is really wanting to help in terms of plowing sidewalks, right, Jerry? Right. Not a lot of capital projects, obviously. I mean, and Parks Outlay, there is some for upgrades at West End, upgrades at Memorial Park bathroom, and bike racks at Jackie's Field, some gravel surfacing on the walking trail extension. And you can see the long list of things that aren't funded, and Mayor has just added a couple more areas where we are not going to be able to, at this point in time, at least as the budget stands, put any money into those things. Unfunded came in at 312.5. And having given you some preliminary information, I would move that we approve this budget as tentative going forward.
Second.
Okay, motion by Karen, second by Dave. Scott?
Will point out that we did receive notification today that highway aids, which is revenue, is going to be about $6,000 less than anticipated. So as opposed to the 140, 400, it's going to be 134, 400.
And will we be able to make up for that within the budget to keep the numbers the same, do you project? Or are we gonna have to change something, like in the capital budget?
Well, you can change something in the budget if you would like, otherwise it would adjust the amount that we have to take out of the savings to balance the budget.
Understood. One question I had is in the gravel for the walking trail, does that include the potential 50% match I think we got a 50% match. Did we apply for grant funding for the first segment of that trail? So is 16,000 the entire cost or the city's portion of the cost is my question.
I would have to look that up.
Okay. So
I'm not sure we even put that in this budget. I think we maybe planned that to come out of the park designated fund, which is an unbudgeted item.
because it's listed under capital.
Currently it is.
But it's parks capital outlay, so does that mean from the parks fund?
We have not made a determination on that.
Okay.
And I think that was kind of one of my questions, as on one of these pages, oh my gosh, I tried to highlight things and my highlight died and it's in the car, but there's like so many things that not a lot of things I had questions on, but the park overlay capital budget under health and human services, when it says parks capital outlet, outlet, is that a word? I don't even know what that word means. Okay, 17,000 in 2022 and almost 46,000 in 2023. That's on page 2 of 410 capital improvement. And is that because of like, I guess my question too was, how much is that the park designated fund?
No.
Is that because of and that's just because of the West End Park, the parks improvement under capital improvement? Is that where that's coming from? I was just a little confused.
So that 45,975 is listed here under the capital. Parks capital outlay on page 3.
So that's not part of the designated fund?
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct, it is not.
Huh.
So there is your answer. The gravel is included in that.
Sure, but my question is the $16,000 the entire cost of that project, or is it just the city's portion of the costs being matched by grant funds somehow?
And is there a grant that we've applied for?
Well, so I thought phase 1, we did apply for a grant to get some matching funds from the DNR for that gravel, is that correct?
We have not submitted any grant requests for that portion of the trail. That's not due until next year.
No. The first part that we did already, wasn't that partially
Yes.
funded by grant funds?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so my
This
question
$16,000,
is,
yes.
is this $16,000 the total cost of that project? Or is it just the city's portion, assuming
that
we'll
was the
be
total.
applying for grant
That's the
funds?
total.
That was
Thank
the
you.
total.
So it could be only $8,000 potentially,
If
if we get the DNR grant that we should probably apply for if we got it the first time, which could make up for the lower highway revenues. Anyway. We don't need to get into that level of detail apparently.
No, because it's a separate, we're talking two different bank accounts.
Capital
Yes,
in general.
correct.
Okay, so,
That's where that was confusing.
okay. But still, it's gonna affect the bottom line of what we have to transfer. I mean, the bottom line is the bottom line, right? Between the general fund and the capital fund and the money we're expending. Or do we only have to make up the general fund?
No, that is in the general fund.
Okay. Anyway, the motion is to approve. And are there any further questions or discussion?
I have one, now I can't find it. Something like cable, it's like a $20,000 cable. Is that the cable that we use, like, so, is that the cable for like the parks?
That we provide to the campers?
That's our access.
Cable access or something?
Yeah, it's not for the parks.
Well, what is that?
I'm sorry, which line item are you referring to?
Do you know what I'm talking about? It's cable something?
Well, there is cable for the parks, but in Scott's cover memo, he talks about discontinuing our relationship in terms of the community access channel.
Yes. But was
And
that-
which one are you talking about?
Was that $20,000? There was one.
Are you referring to the $20,000 of cable franchise fee?
Yes.
Okay,
What is that?
that is a revenue source. So all individuals who subscribe to Charter spectrum. You look at your bill, you pay a franchise fee. That's part of the overall fee. Back many decades ago, municipalities were the ones who selected their cable provider. And so the city of Washburn had a contract at some point with a cable provider. And as time went on, these cable providers gobbled each other up, and so we were left with just a couple cable providers. And it reached the point a couple of years ago where the state said, no more of this municipal contracting for cable TV providers, we are taking it over. And as part of that legislation, they basically froze in this cable franchise fee. So we still collect that revenue, even though we have no control over who our cable TV provider is for the city.
But we get that.
We get that.
Exactly.
First time I've seen it and trying to understand it. Okay, thanks for that explanation.
There's always
Maybe I'll pay my
something
cable
new.
fee, won't be so angry anymore.
Did you notice this Pac-Man guys?
Yeah, right.
All right, so we have a motion in a second. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I have a question.
On the motion we just passed?
Yes.
Okay.
In my memo, I had suggested that we take 5,000 from the gravel for public works and put that towards the purchase of an ambulance UTV instead. Did you include that in your motion?
Well, certainly. It can be included, or we can make another motion. Because the finance department, the committee did look at that, and we did discuss it, and thought it made sense. Right,
So
Carol?
if we're doing an amendment, are we making, is there a separate amendment that we can make with the parks designated fund?
The attorney just left, and now I don't know what we can do. That we already voted on. So this was passed as presented. So now, can we make another motion?
I'll make a motion
Yeah.
to approve the $5,000 adjustment from the ROC to the EMT UTV requested by Public Works.
I'll second.
Okay. So we've got Dave with the motion, I got Tom on the second, to make that change. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Jen, did
I
you
think I'm
have?
just behind because I wasn't at the September.
Oh.
I had COVID.
Oh,
I'm so sad. So this is the deal. I guess Parks Designated Fund, can you just answer me a question? Like you guys talk about that and how much money is left in that? I mean, I know we don't have a lot, you said that you kind of wanted to save that a little bit. That's our flexibility. I read it in your memo. I just was wondering, what's the balance of the Parks Designated Fund? And is there anything that's coming out of that?
I would have to, I can look here in 1 minute what the balance is. I think it's in the neighborhood of some $250,000 if I remember off the top of my head. But at this time, no additional projects have been approved out of that fund.
We can do that anytime throughout the year.
Correct.
And I guess I was wondering a little bit of why like some of the park projects weren't being funded out of that and being funded out of the capital investment. But it would make more sense if we really wanted to, for example, I was trying to think of like balancing that. What's in the, for like the community in terms of like, and maybe this is where we replace the TDOT or something. I guess I was just confused in why we weren't using the parks designated fund to do some park improvements versus using the capital investment part of it. Because it just makes sense. So that's what that fund is for.
So the answer to the question is, there are a number of projects that could be potentially funded out of that, and as of the end of August, I don't have my September sheet, there was $253,000 plus change. If I remember correctly, the only outstanding thing that we had, that maybe that is all paid off, is we've got the park plan expenses that is currently underway, and I believe we had one of those other park, it was perhaps a walking trail improvement that may have some expenses coming out of this.
Oh, with those coastal ones.
Yes, that's working its way through this particular fund right now. So I do believe that the park designated fund can be discussed in more detail. I would probably suggest that you may wish to wait until after next month, once you discuss what you want to do with the campgrounds and how you want to move forward, and kind of put all of your projects on the table that are out there. Because I know tennis courts was brought up, however, the tennis court expense far exceeds our revenue abilities, and there are no large grant possibilities to make that up. A very small grant was received, but we honestly don't have the ability to do that. So the tennis court project is back in planning as to
Correct, I was thinking more of this.
And I wasn't referring to a specific project. I was just saying the tennis courts, whatever is decided to be done with the tennis courts is a need somewhere. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just, the parks capital outlay, I guess, I was getting confused with parks designated fund. And I was just curious of why we were spending the $45,000 that I feel like kind of is appropriate under that parks designated fund, because that's why we collect that fee, is to like utilize the parks. Like, for example, like the bike racks, that kind of stuff just really makes sense to come out of that parks designated fund, because I like to really, I know we can use it for anything, but I just think, anyway,
So
it's
we'll-
fine, we
we
can
can
talk
look at
about it
that.
later, because the other thing that I've been getting a lot of questions on is these dog picked up
Oh,
bag
yeah.
stations.
Yeah.
And I think that really is appropriate under the parks designated fund. So maybe this next month we can talk a little bit about that. I'm totally fine with it. I just was a little confused. I haven't been at the meeting.
I think you brought up a good point though, and it's definitely something that we can look at as we get into things. Karen?
And I would agree, Jen, I think those are enhancements, and I think from the finance committee standpoint, we look to the parks designated fund as being able to do those, kind of nice kinds of things. The things that we included in the capital outlay are, the bathrooms and stuff, and that seems to fit more a capital outlay,
Yeah,
line item.
I was just,
But,
couldn't figure out
Yeah.
why, so thank you.
I think there are lots of ways you could spend the money.
I was just trying to
Okay.
figure out if
All
we
right.
had any projects in there. I'm totally good, but I think something to think about is
Sure.
if I just, we just purchased a couple of those dog bag
You've
stations.
got enough money to do that.
We do, we have
Okay.
one that is used highly down at the marina, and I think we just need another one.
And just to clarify, the park designated funds, is the park committee able to expend dollars out of that fund, or does that have to get
But we
approved?
could recommend, so we'll put it on we're gonna put it on our agenda for next month to kind of talk through. We were supposed to set that agenda today, but.
Okay, moving on, to tab 8, and the discussion and action on the proposed 2023 fee schedule. Just want to point out that, one of the things here on the first page, the flea market license, if we are recommending to eliminate or change that fee, it would need to be an ordinance change. And I'm not sure, we want to take that out. It's not hurting anything being in there. Having said that, I'm wondering the best way to go about, it looks like, the highlighted items are the things that have changes. And so a motion could be made to approve, with the changes outlined, unless someone wants to make a different motion.
we need a motion before we can discuss.
Yes.
Well, I guess,
Or we could go through one by one, but,
well, there's some questions and I don't know how to even make a motion before we have answers to some of this stuff. So, I mean, I can make a motion to approve it.
and there could be an amendment to include changes
Yeah,
then.
so I'll make a motion to approve the fee schedule as listed with changes.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Motion by Dave and a second by Karen. Now, are there specific questions?
What's an alarm permit?
So basically, it's, if a building has a fire alarm, and a fire alarm service, that there is supposed to actually be a permit for that. To my knowledge, that hasn't been done in 30+ years.
A permit or an alarm that's connected to like an old alarm, fire alarm that's connected to the fire department, or just an alarm service, like,
Where it goes to a switchboard or
Sentry
something.
whatever.
Yeah.
To the 911.
All right.
Is there any way of knowing if there are services like
No,
that?
I mean,
I believe that when I asked about that, there were 2 that existed.
we can probably just, I mean, most of those things today are wireless and people buy them and put them in themselves anyway. We can probably eliminate that one. And then the flea market one, I think, just keep that one.
So, just to clarify on that one, it says recommend to eliminate or change fee. What's listed here is a change in the fee, so we're going with that as the change, correct? Okay. To the $25 license fee, keeping the daily fee $30.
Flashbacks of the comp plan.
Right? Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I think the natural lawn permit fee. Fine.
As recommended?
Yeah. Everything else, I just had, the electrical was, building permits were just to be removed, but not plumbing. Is there a reason for that?
We had debated removing plumbing. It's extremely rare that we would have a plumbing permit without new construction or renovation. I thought I would think about that one a little more, so I didn't recommend doing that, but I do know that there are separate issues with the electrical.
Okay, so I have a question. If someone builds a home in the city of Washburn, they get a UDC permit from the local UDC inspector, inspection agency that's tasked with doling those out. Is this a separate fee that would be attached to, like, if you had a new house being built, you paid, I think the inspection fees or the permit and inspection fees are $1,200 or $1,800 total from start to finish.
Through the state?
Through the UDC inspection agency, not the state.
Okay.
Are these, like, would you have to apply then for a plumbing permit from the city on top of that UDC? On top of what you've already paid to have your home inspected through the UDC agency?
There will be a fee, but it would be the residential 1 and 2 family new construction fee with, as outlined there. Because the plumbing does not apply to new construction. That's if somebody would, for whatever reason, decide to replumb their house that's already existing.
I'm wondering why, and I'm not taking this personal or anything. I'm just wondering why we're keeping the plumbing in and the electrical out, because quite honestly, I'll be honest with you. What are the requirements for an electrical or plumbing permit? Is it if you're going to install a new bathroom in your home, that would require new plumbing to be installed, that would require a permit? And or what if you just moved a sink in a kitchen 5 feet to the left? Would you need a permit for that?
Under the city's building code, anything that's gonna be basically under a $2,000 renovation would be that permit. Require a permit for.
And that's for any building project.
Correct.
Okay.
That has been the standard. So, I mean, if you want to remove the plumbing, I'm not going to object, then you should also remove the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning as well.
Here's the other thing, there's no one to enforce this,
Correct.
right? I mean,
Are any of these being permitted currently?
These are very rare circumstances that we would get something like this. If somebody's putting in new air conditioning units separately that did not have it, would technically be a requirement.
and is this a requirement the homeowner complies with or the contractor?
The homeowner is ultimately responsible. However, we do have an ordinance that if the contractor does not do it, they would be warned. There's a double the fee, but if it happens the second time, then they get a citation.
The contract.
Correct.
If they're working on something without a permit,
Correct.
which is standard.
So are you proposing,
Well, I just don't know why we're removing electrical and not plumbing and,
an HVAC?
yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not opposed to removing all of it. I'm not necessarily, I mean, it's one more step in the process that is, annoying, but, I mean, if everyone starts to do this, it could be a revenue generator for the city, because there's a lot, I mean, I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, right here now. I've worked on plenty of homes, plenty of stuff in the city of Washburn that was not permitted. Almost 100% of them.
Because people don't know. People have no
don't
idea.
know. Right.
And
So,
contractors may not know
I
either.
guarantee you every plumber that's ever plumbed anything in Washburn doesn't do it either. So I don't know how many permits do we get for this stuff?
For plumbing, electrical, or
Well,
HVAC?
any of them, I suppose, are we removing electrical because no one gets one? And the plumbers are behaving and the electricians are not? I don't know.
As I said, we get very few permits for any of these items. I know that electrical is really, those guidelines are very strict with the state right now. We have no ability to enforce it. Plumbing will happen on occasion. HVAC, again, is also rare. Removing of these things right now is not going to make or break the city.
And I'm thinking of, they're doing a big project up at the courthouse, which they have a building permit for. But I don't know if they've applied specifically for an HVAC permit, because they probably don't know that you're supposed to. Maybe they did, I don't know. But I think work happens all the time and people don't have any idea that these fees are even in effect. Obviously.
Right.
So do we want to get rid of them because they're really not doing us any good anyway, and we just are trying to make it easier for people to do work on their houses they're already paying for? Do they really need to get a permit from the city?
And then the lack of enforcement, as we were just saying.
Right.
So
We can't-
other things, if we don't have the enforcement, then how do we have these old things still on the books? Just,
And how much revenue would we actually generate?
If it's
So-
under $2,000,
Doesn't need one.
if you're saying we don't need that.
So I'm just gonna put a star by the heating and the HVAC and the plumbing right now as potential additional changes we might make an amendment for.
Or just.
So I'm marking them as things that we'll consider
I
when
mean,
we,
you could include those things into a permit, period, like if you're doing like a larger project. It's very hard to determine what is going to become a $2,000 job. I mean, you could start work on something, without, and like, well, it's only gonna be $500 to do that, and then you get into it, the next thing you know, you're there for 3 days, and it turns into an $8,000 project. And you don't have, and, I mean, who's gonna, after you just got telling someone that it's gonna be $500, it turns into $8,000, and you say, well, I gotta go to the city and pay that another $50 too. I mean, so,
it would make sense for those two.
but there are a lot of municipalities that this is just commonplace as well. When you go to do work, you just go get an electrical permit. There just isn't a $2,000 threshold,
Oh.
I mean, it's just whatever you're gonna do. Period. You get a permit. And it can be as little as $15 or, I don't know.
Is it ever as little as $15?
Well, I mean, no, it's not.
But it could be.
But isn't the state wanting to go that way anyways?
Well, this has been an ongoing thing for the last several years, and I've been trying to get everyone to figure this out, because here's my thing, and I don't know why I triggered my phone, but,
Thought you were gonna show us something.
right, and I don't wanna beat this horse, but there's, somebody has to be, and I've been trying to get the county to be the one who does this, but they had no interest in doing so. The permit agency for the county.
Well, they are for the whole county except for the cities, which have their own.
No,
Zoning is separate from building.
yeah,
It's
so
a completely different
the
thing.
county,
Oh, you're talking about buildings
I'm
specifically.
talking about the county hiring building inspectors that would handle the entire thing and eliminate PBC agencies. Because the whole thing is convoluted, but, very many of the cities across the country have permits to do things. It's just if there's a $2,000 threshold here, I don't know where that came from. And, I mean, if it's not worth the time to make it $25 is it worth the time for the city to get $25 to issue your time or Tammy's time or whoever's doing it?
The main purpose for these permits is to have a record of improvements on the property and to help track property value.
Right, exactly. And that's where people get caught in other places when they sell their home. There's obvious upgrades, and then they check with the township or the city, and they find out there's no permits, and then they're told, and no inspections, and then you're on the hook for all kinds of fees and fines. So electrical, commercial and industrial stuff already has to be, you have to pay a fee to the state for a permit fee, for any electrical work to do commercial or industrial. So I would say I don't know what to say.
But if we're gonna change one, it would make sense
Yeah.
to
I mean,
change the
it doesn't,
others.
to me, it doesn't make any sense to take out electrical and leave the other two And also, I don't know, I think they, I don't know.
I'm just gonna put a star by those two for right now and let's keep going. Is that okay?
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
I thought we just leave it the same as it is right now. We don't change anything. We don't enforce anything. And then when the state finally gets their act together as to what they're gonna do about all this, then maybe we can eliminate it or decide to keep it.
So you're suggesting we keep the electrical fees in there
Yep.
just as they are?
And the plumbers and electricians and heating guys will all still work illegally and then, I don't know.
And, I mean, potentially, part of this is education.
Right.
And that's an extra thing that
Right.
it's hard to do on top of just doing the work that has to get done. So,
I don't
something
know
to think
why.
about. Hold on.
No, why would it be done under the building permit? Because it
Well,
says like fee includes electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and structural changes. It just seems like when they come in for a building permit, it would be like part of that. Like,
So to clarify what that is that's new construction in the residential 1 and 2 family. So that's a separate piece. The regular plumbing, heating, and electrical are on existing homes when you're doing renovations simply on those items.
but you have remodeling under the first piece. You have new
Under
construction,
commercial.
additions, remodeling.
Right, that would be, let's say you're gonna remodel an entire house, rip it apart and put it back together again.
But not always.
Not all, but electrical would be if I'm.
Putting in a hot
putting
tub.
new, yeah, right, putting up a new electrical service on a house and it didn't
Does it
contain
fit under,
anything else.
doesn't fit under new construction, additional remodeling?
Right.
Okay, I don't even wanna try to understand it, I'm fine.
So-
But I do think we should do it consistently.
To be quite honest, this is one of these Pandora's boxes that's been sitting there that I have not had adequate time to address. And then I'm just trying to look at starting, so I opened a little box there. Right, just kind of, trying to.
Yellow highlighting and slashing out one, but.
all right, so stars are made and we're gonna go on to the next question / item that anyone wants to bring up. I have one. Well, I have a note here, but I don't remember why I wrote it. So it's the placement of the monuments. I have a question of recommending an ordinance change. Because this is an ordinance, is that right?
So there is an ordinance, we are looking at making some recommendations related to cemetery policy changes coming forward. And one of them would be to potentially eliminate this fee. I do not believe that it is necessary any longer, just the way we do the work.
So if the ordinance change occurs, is that automatically gonna take care of this fee? Or do we have to actually change the fee schedule separately?
If the ordinance is eliminated, it would, but I'm just trying to make sure it doesn't get missed, and this is kind of the catalyst for getting that done.
So eliminate or change fee is the recommendation. So the $25 is changing the fee. Do we want to change the fee or do we want to eliminate it?
You prefer elimination, so,
Preferred, but we'll have to bring that forward to you.
okay,
So,
put on your recommendation.
Okay, I'm putting a star by that one. Anyone else? I have another one if not. My next question then is boat launch fees. I just noticed, and maybe this is fine, that the boat launch fees, the annual fee for anyone to get a boat launch fee is $75. However, if you're camping, it's $100 just for a month. So I'm just playing devil's, no,
No.
monthly fee, $100? Oh, mooring, sorry, mooring versus launch, got it.
Yeah, and, you know, I was looking at, we still have that in ordinance too. At this time, we really don't have place for mooring. That's back when we had the finger piers
Yeah. I
down
was like,
there.
I don't think I've ever seen anybody more.
Since almost that's been done.
We
That can't
we
hurt.
used to.
At this time.
So that, you know, but that will be dependent if that ever gets put back in or something like that.
It's probably not a bad idea.
The placeholder.
It's, yeah, because the way that people are going right now, people might try to just moor their boat out there and live off it somewhere. Because a lot of people are living off their boats, right? And so I can see somebody.
That was the one
what's
that we
the-
had to clean up last
What's
year.
the definition of
Right.
mooring? Is mooring attaching to something
Another anchor.
or
It's anchoring
anchoring?
out.
Anchoring would be considered mooring.
Or even more to a dock, is basically fixing up the vessel so that it doesn't move.
Okay, so when it does that on its own with an anchor, I thought we didn't have any jurisdiction over that.
We don't.
So it's only when it's attaching to something that's city owned that we can charge a fee for.
Yeah, sometimes they have mooring buoys.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know that
In order to do that, you have to have it published in the Federal Register, you have to get agreement with the Coast Guard to establish a mooring field. And then you put down an anchor with a mooring ball, and they can hook to it. But it has
And we're
to
not
be-
going there.
It has to be, if you look at La Pointe, from the end of the detached cold or break wall to the entrance to the marina, shoreward is a designated mooring field. And they can put mooring balls there and hook to them. The other thing that happens is they don't have to show anchor lights. If you don't have, you're not hooked to one of those mooring balls, you have to show an anchor light after dark.
It might be something someday we consider.
Okay, talk about
Okay.
Pandora's box.
Okay.
Now I will talk about all the boats that break their mooring and end up on Joni Beach.
Oh, boy. Okay.
There's not a,
It's Lake Superior, right?
it's Lake Superior.
That's all you have to say.
You know, Ashland has a perfect spot over there where they have that reclamation area and they have that break wall. That would be a perfect place, but apparently there's all kinds of issues over liability, ongoing liability for whatever's still down there.
Okay,
So we're not doing more, okay.
so then I want to draw your attention to this printout.
Yep.
To go along with the camping fees, and it's answering the question of how are our fees compared to these other surrounding area campgrounds? In case you were wondering, because I was. And Scott had the information ready to go,
Totally.
or Tony did.
And looking at it, we're actually fairly competitive. We're, high, obviously, than some areas and right on target with others. It's a little complicated because we don't have a monthly fee, but we have weekly fees. Our weekly fees are a little higher than some of the others. But certainly our daily fees look to be right in line with what others are charging.
And this is current, so others may also be considering changing their fees at the same time.
Right.
Right, with the exception of Red Cliff casinos and the Apostle Islands area campground and RV, they're $60, $55, $50, I guess, maybe depending on how big the site is. Kind of like what we talked about with those larger RVs.
Right. And full hookup.
And full hookup, yeah. I think the only question, that we get all the time is those seasonals. People think, and I don't know if they're right or wrong, like, if everybody's getting a deal by being seasonal.
Right, their summer home.
Their summer home, they're getting, paid for, and I think earlier, like I was trying to calculate the numbers, you know, if you look at the, not the weekly fee, I was just kind of timesing it out by the days. You know, it's like, it is. It is cheaper, for sure, it was like a couple thousand, when you take like 180. But I mean, if you also go into that concept too, where you get a free day every week, that gets knocked down a little bit, you know, so.
So the logic on the seasonal campground site is the seasonal rate is 55% of the maximum daily rate that could be charged for that site.
And partly, I would assume that's because there's less maintenance involved or less work involved from the campground manager, or what's the?
There'd really be no change on that. But
Just in having to keep watch on who's paid for their thing every day.
that, it's
Guaranteed income.
It's guaranteed income. This has been a debate for years upon years, and the number of seasonal sites has been limited at both campgrounds. They have been moved over the years to not be at what are considered the premium sites, except those who have been still grandfathered and who have been there for many, many years. Seasonal campers will tend to be the eyes and ears of what's going on in the campground. They will tend to keep watch over things as opposed to regular campers. So when there's a problem or concern, they usually bring that to our attention. And that has been helpful in the past. And keep in mind that the campgrounds, and when we do open them in April and May and then in September and October, are for the most part empty except for the seasonals. So that's part of the reason for that discount as well.
I would, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, and I've been part of the debate, and I would say that at a couple of those, at our community meeting, we had some people talk about, you know, how hard it is to get a campsite. And if you're talking about like revenues, you know, why would you continue to have this seasonal when now our campgrounds are full all the time? And the other comment was that we definitely have some seasonal sites that people aren't there very much. It's kind of like they park their stuff there and they taking up a spot in our campground that our community members can't even get anymore, and it's a shame. I'm just passing on to you what I heard at this, at the West End Park. It is an interesting thing that I think a lot of other places, like if you look on the site here, I don't know how many other people have seasonal sites. I'm not saying we need to get rid of it, and I'm glad we're actually putting up the fees a little bit in it. I just wanted to let you guys know what I heard, so. Good or bad or whatever, you know, somebody's opinion.
Quick question on the seasonals and how, so we talked about people who have been grandfathered in or who have been there for many, 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 many years. Have we ever discussed doing a lottery? Because, you know, why do those people continue to keep getting it every year for many, many, many years? You know, when there's other people who would like those spots as well. Is that doing the public a service? And I know that that's a sore subject because I've been down that road when I was involved with county campgrounds. But they have since gone to a lottery system. You know, every X number of years, your number's up and you may not get your spot back. And then you have to do it in enough time where people can plan for moving to a different one. I don't know, I'm not saying we need to get into that discussion right now, but there are all sorts of discussions that we could have about seasonal camping.
Yes, once you made your point about it being helpful to have some reliable seasonals that keep an eye on things, you know, and report in when we don't have enough staff to do it all. I'm wondering if that's part of why you choose some, I mean, who's choosing, who's grandfathered in, who gets to stay in sites that normally wouldn't be there. I'm just trying to understand that.
What the
that comment
process
as
is.
well.
The process is if you are selected for a seasonal site, you get first right to get that site back for the next season. And that has just been the practice.
So you're just
So
not taking it away from them.
we're not taking it away from them. So we do have a waiting list of people looking to be seasonals. People put their name on that list every year. When we do have openings, people just choose not to return, go someplace else or whatnot. And, we usually have a few of those each year. We go down that list and then give people on that waiting list the opportunity to select from the available sites.
It's pretty much the same way the marina operates.
First right of refusal and then,
That all
hold on.
makes sense, I just want to finish this thought, because the reason you were mentioning grandfathering in rights to a site was in reference to some seasonal sites were turned into not seasonal. In the one, I thought you were saying that there were some sites that you would otherwise have taken away from seasonal use.
In the past, we have done several different, periodically over the years, we've done some analysis as to which sites are more popular than others. It's been a little difficult lately because the campground's been full, but it always wasn't always full.
Wasn't always full.
We looked at which sites are the most popular ones and why is that? And we had made efforts in the past to make those more popular sites the daily sites.
Yep, that's what I wondered, and if those could be higher fees, and if it's time to just say it's not seasonal anymore. Sorry.
and we do have some overnight premium sites listed, which,
That was implemented a few years ago where lakefront sites, very popular, given that designation and with a higher fee.
Everyone I've talked to on the website, fine.
Karen?
Just
And then
just a quick comment about a non-revenue producing benefit of seasonal campers. You may know that I'm an active volunteer at ABC, and this year, for the whole season, we had a couple that are seasonal at West End Park who came and volunteered at least weekly, if not twice a week, at ABC. Now, that's a non-revenue benefit, but, I could make the case that anything that is helping ABC, that puts money back into the community, makes a difference. Another example, a couple that are seasonal, have participated in some of the WHA activities like the History Fest and have paid their revenue, their, admission fees, and like that kind of activity in our community, have participated in other community activities. So that's a non-revenue producing, but there is some soft benefits of having seasonal people. They add to some good things that happen in
They
our
will say they're part of
community.
our, they come here, they're part, they
Right.
believe this is their home. Oh, yeah.
So,
It is some.
yeah, so
That's understood.
there are benefits, especially those volunteers.
I've heard the same thing that Jennifer was talking about, but I also do know down there that a lot of the seasonal and those that pay bi-weekly were baking in the park
Jen and
ground.
Mary.
They were baking in the park, in the campground, were on playground equipment. They were down there picking up dog crap. They were out on the beach, raking up and doing on the drive, raking up goose poop and putting it in the trash. I mean, they're volunteering their time. And those people that are paying bi-weekly are paying a lot more money than the seasonals for their premium site. Because there's three of them, they get the exact same site every year.
So is everyone okay with these proposed fees for the campground?
I think we're right in line with everything.
Seems like it.
Another question I had moving on is, under recreation fees, the after-hours use of facilities. I asked Scott about that, and it sounds like that's for, outside of our normal hours of the skating rink in particular. where we have to have someone there for a special event. That's what that fee is for. Anything else other than what, or about the highlighted changes that we want to potentially make an amendment to the motion for? And I say potentially because I'm not sure where we ended up with our asterisk items under the electrical. And the placement of the monument, I don't know if we came to a determination on that one. If we were recommending that go to 0, or if we're waiting for the ordinance to happen on that. The ordinance change, or are we recommending an ordinance change that would then take it away? It sounds like maybe.
If you are comfortable with the concept of eliminating it, we will come forward with that ordinance change.
Okay.
Because it's not something that has honestly been enforced.
It's kind of an outdated thing, it sounds like.
That seems to make sense, and I would say that it just seems to make sense to keep the electrical the same as the plumbing and the other one for now, and then deal with it another time.
As a whole, potentially,
So
okay.
do I need to amend my motion then for each one of these items that we should keep or get rid of?
I think the only one left then, so I guess it would be the two, the electrical, keeping the electrical as it was, and removing the monument placement fee.
Okay.
Are you
That friendly adjustment to your
Yeah.
motion?
So I will amend the motion to approve the 2023 fee schedule with the exception of the electrical not being eliminated and the monument placement of monument.
Page 7.
That fee being removed?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
Okay, so let's vote on the amendment first. You have something first?
We'll go ahead.
All in favor of the amendment? Signify by
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries for the amendment. Do you have something before we vote on the whole thing?
Just want to note on the sidewalk replacement permit, we're gonna change that from sand provided to topsoil provided, because we don't actually provide the sand. So,
And that doesn't have anything to do with actual fees, so I think we're fine with that.
yes.
Okay, then we have the motion to approve by Dave, seconded by Karen. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, everyone. We made our way through that. Next is discussion and action on resolution 22-006, endorsing the Bayfield County EMS Study Committee final report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mary, second by Tom. I would just like to say thank you to Scott for serving on that committee. It sounds like a lot of work, discussion occurred there that will hopefully get us closer to some solutions beyond what we've done already ourselves, and hopefully at the statewide level, getting some recognition for the fact that these things are happening at the county level. So thank you. Any other comments, questions, or discussion, Scott?
It was suggested on the actual resolution that there be a slight adjustment at the, be it further resolved, the city, the applicant will advocate.
Yes, thank you. So with that adjustment, is that fine with your motion, and Tom? Okay. All right, with that amendment, or with that, change, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our last item, discussion and action on street use permit for Halloween parade on Washington Avenue and West 8th Street on October 29th from 1 o'clock until 2:30, Washburn Chamber of Commerce petitioner.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I got Mary and a second by Laura. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for doing that. That should be fun. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And Tony, I forgot I have.
Recording stopped.
Haven't had a chance to look at my work calendar. If 9:30 works, I'll text you right when I'm done.
Okay.
Hopefully 9:30 will work and I'll be able to come down. I just